Tim says that he's going to beat up John or knock him out or something along those lines. Michael Mendoza also says he's going to knock John out. They talk about the fact that Timothy is a professional fighter, and they talk about it to Abby, Nicole, and Olivia. They're not just having a little conversation in private talking about this. They are conveying that information to the same girls that they had just been talking to earlier. We're going to knock this guy out by the end of the night. I'm a professional fighter. And so, of course, the girls go warn John. Why shouldn't they warn him? These guys are out to knock you out. They're out for you. And John goes up to the bar, and we don't have a recording of what was said, but we have the recording of the interaction. And sure, John pushes him. But it's broken up, and John walks away, and that is the end of it, as far as he knows. You'll also see the bartenders don't only talk to John, they talk to Timothy Pouliot. And after they do that, John is minding his own business, talking to the girls, talking to Abby and the other girls, and a few minutes later, you see Michael Mendoza in the video. He's near John, but he's kind of looking the other way, and you see Timothy work his way down the ramp. Remember that ramp that was shown to you during the opening statement? John and the girls are all standing by the end of that ramp on the dance floor. The dance floor is kind of lower than the main bar. And Tim works his way down onto the dance floor and out and whispers something, not sure what, into Michael Mendoza's ear. And Mendoza does kind of a little half moon right up to John and looks away a little bit, and then all of a sudden punches him right in the face. A sucker punch so bad you'll see the blood all over John's face. This is on the right side of his face. Michael Mendoza was not unarmed at that time. You're going to see body cam video of the police officer that's in the bar, and you'll just catch a little glimpse of it, but you're going to see rings on both of Mendoza's hands. He doesn't punch John in the face with bare hands. He's got a big old ring on his ring finger there. That explains the giant cut on the front of John's face. And you're going to see the blood coming down his face. You're going to see that in the videos too. John never saw it coming. That's why he's walking out of the bar screaming, "Who punched me? Who punched me?" He just got sucker punched in the face, and his face has been cut open. Is he upset? Absolutely he's upset. Because he's just been darn close to being knocked out after he was already told that they were going to knock him out. And when he gets outside, he's upset, and the girls are trying to calm him down, and they're trying to clean the blood off his face, and he's still upset. And the state's right. It should have ended there, but it didn't. Mendoza is across the street in his car. Trenton Nash is in the car. And Mendoza kind of hides, stays in the car. And Nash gets out, and he walks over, and he comes right up to John. He smokes a cigarette and tries to pretend that he's got no idea what happened, as if he had nothing to do with anything that happened in the bar, as if he wasn't there with Timothy Pouliot, as if he wasn't there with Michael Mendoza. And he comes right up to him, and he gets in his face, and even though John DeLee, who's just been punched in the face, tells him to get out of here, even though Abigail Elliott Orr tells him to get out of here, he doesn't. Does John get physical with him at that point? Yes. Should he have? Probably not, but he's not on trial for his interaction with Trenton Nash at that point, who, by the way, is just continuing the attack from inside of the bar. At that point, Michael Mendoza says, you know, I ought to get involved in this. Now's when he comes out of the car, gets up, stands on the snowbank, and holds up a can of pepper spray right into John's face. Right there on the sidewalk. That's when John pulls out the gun. When he is under attack. He pulls out the gun, he drops it, and he picks it back up, and he warns Michael Mendoza away. And it works. Michael Mendoza backs up and backs away. And John turns around, and John and Soldano and Gage Chandler, the three of them start walking up the street, walking away. That's not good enough for Nash and Mendoza. They follow him up the street. And I just want to back up a little bit. Remember when you were told that Tim walks out of the bar nice and calm, he's not screaming and yelling, and he walks out of the bar and he goes left. You'll see what he does on the video. He walks out of the bar and he looks to the right, and that's where Nash and DeLee are just about engaging. And he takes a look, and he walks down to the end of the street, and he acts as a lookout. He's watching the end of that street, and he's watching that interaction, and he's deciding when and if he needs to get engaged. So when Nash is confronting DeLee, you've got Mendoza in the car across the street watching from one angle, and you got Timothy Pouliot down at the end of the street watching from the other angle. They are in attack mode, and they will not leave John DeLee to go home that night. They follow him up the street. As Mendoza and Nash are following John and his friends up the street, they're yelling back as loud as they can to Timothy Pouliot, he's got a gun, he's got a gun. Mendoza is actively telling Pouliot he's got a gun. What does Pouliot do? He goes right after John, right up the street. Abigail Elliott Orr confronts him. She grabs him. She tries to stop him. She says, "Don't do it." And what does Timothy Pouliot do? He challenges her to punch him in the face. She declines to do so, and he goes on, gets away from her, and he goes on to confront John DeLee, a man that he knows has a gun. And he follows him up. Now, John at that point is facing a long, dark alley to get back to his car. Matthew Soldano is standing at the end of the street, but Nash and Mendoza are standing on the opposite sidewalk, yelling and screaming at him, harassing him, and Timothy Pouliot walks up and leads the charge. You'll see on the video, as soon as Timothy walks past Mendoza and Nash to confront John DeLee, Nash and Mendoza themselves begin following Timothy. It's a setup. Is John DeLee supposed to walk down the dark alley with these people following him? Is that a reasonable place to go? So, unarmed, right now we know at the very least that John DeLee has been punched in the face with rings. We know that Mendoza has rings on. We know that Mendoza has pepper spray. And the three of them are confronting him. And rather than walk all the way down that dark alley, he turns around to confront the threat that's facing him. And so he does. And you'll notice, you'll see in that video, you see the three people surrounding him. You see Pouliot standing directly, almost face to face with John DeLee. And you'll see to the right, to John's right, you'll see Mike Mendoza. And to the right of Mike Mendoza, you'll see Trenton Nash. Interesting little detail that the state leaves out at that point. When you see the video of Trenton Nash following Timothy Pouliot to go attack John, he's wearing his coat. He's got a long sleeve black coat on. Michael Mendoza's already in his t-shirt. This is a cold January day in Manchester, New Hampshire. And Michael Mendoza's out there in a t-shirt. Why? Because he's about to get in a fight. Nash has had his coat on. The funny thing about the Soho footage is part of it looks to the right and part of it looks to the left. So the right looks down the alley and the left looks down Old Granite Street. And the shooting happens right in the middle. And the only footage we have of the shooting itself is that cell phone video. But between the time that Nash crosses into that blind spot, we'll call it, and the time that cell phone video starts, his coat is gone. Why is his coat off in January in New Hampshire on a cold winter night if he is not part of this fight? So he's got his coat off, right? And that's not the only thing he does. The state says it's not 3-on-1. John's got all his friends there. Well, first of all, Gage Chandler, you don't see him in that video because he is up on the sidewalk on the other side of a snowbank and on another side of the rail in front of the Soho Bistro. He's not out there in the street getting involved in this. And Matthew Soldano is confronted by Trenton Nash, who's already thrown his coat off. Hey, do you have a gun? He checks him. He checks him. And how does Matthew Soldano react to that? He puts his hands up and he starts walking away. He's behind John DeLee, he's walking away, and he's facing away. And that's the moment when it is truly 3-on-1 with two other people who all mean John DeLee harm. That's when, for the second time in the same evening, John DeLee gets punched in the face by somebody that he has been told is a professional fighter. They've told him they're going to knock him out. They meant it. They've shown they mean it. And if you're standing on that street there with a gun in your hand, knowing that these people know you have a gun and are ready to punch you in the face anyways, ready to surround you, ready to confront you, ready to punch you in the face, they do. Second time, he's been punched directly in the head. How does he know that they don't mean to get his gun? How does he know that they don't mean to kill him? How does he know that they don't mean to kill him with his own gun? The judge is going to talk to you about the definition of deadly force. So take the judge's definition and not mine. But deadly force in New Hampshire means an assault which the actor commits with the purpose of causing or which he knows to create a substantial risk of causing death or serious bodily injury. What do you think, what will you think that Timothy Pouliot meant to do to John DeLee at that time? What will you think that Trenton Nash meant to do to John DeLee at that time? What will you think that Michael Mendoza meant to do to John DeLee at that time, if not death or serious bodily injury. So the moment he gets punched in the face, again for the second time, he immediately pulls out his gun and fires. The state makes a lot about the fact that some of the bullets went into Timothy Pouliot's back. I want to make absolutely clear, Timothy Pouliot did not run away. He didn't retreat from this encounter. At the time that the trigger is first pulled, he's facing John DeLee. He falls backwards and he lands backwards facing John DeLee. He might have twisted on his way down, but he wasn't retreating from that encounter. He never did. Those 9 shots happened in a split second. The state would make you think John DeLee thought between each and every time he pulled that trigger, oh, have I neutralized the threat yet? Nope. Oh, have I neutralized the threat yet? That's not the speed that any of this happens. He's facing a serious threat to his life and his well-being, and he pulls the trigger fast. The moment the threat is neutralized, you'll see Mendoza and Nash go running. Timothy Pouliot's no longer a threat, and he walks away. Now, lest you think that John DeLee can't recognize the difference between a real threat to his life and his safety and a fake threat to his life and safety, you're going to see when the police officers arrive. Those police officers arrive, they pull their guns on him. And he knows that those police officers don't mean him harm, because the first thing he does is take the gun and put it down on the ground. He puts the gun down on the ground and away from him so quickly that the police officers, both police officers that are involved in detaining him at that point, both of them have to ask what happened to the gun, even though he did it right in front of them. Put your gun down, they're yelling at him, and he's pointing. You can see him point at the gun on the ground. So even police officers that are pointing guns at him, he knows that they're not a threat. He doesn't try to use any kind of force against them. He puts the gun down on the ground. He gets down on his knees. He puts his arms out, and he says, "It was self-defense. It was 3-on-1. They attacked me." Immediately. That's what he's telling the police. If you go back and look at all the evidence in this case, at the end of this case, which you're going to have the ability to do, you're going to see that everything that John DeLee told the police right then and there was correct. Timothy Pouliot, Michael Mendoza, and Trenton Nash planned an attack on him. They used tactical maneuvers to attack him. They threatened him. They pursued him. They gave him no out. Unfortunately, Timothy Pouliot lost his life as a result of it. And again, the state's right. It should have ended many times before then. But John DeLee is not guilty of these crimes that he's charged with. And at the end of the case, we'll come back and ask you again to find him not guilty. Thank you.